Together, we'll honor the past, enrich the present, and inspire the future. Welcome to the Wandering Métis. We're here at the beautiful historical site at Batoche, and what a place to be. So much history in this church and on the grounds here, and I couldn't ask for three better guys to join me here than these three right here. Introduce yourself to me, please.
JJ Lavallee.
Where are you from, JJ?
I'm originally from St. Ambrose, Manitoba.
Okay, and how long have you been here in Saskatchewan?
A little bit over a year and a half.
Next we have
Joseph Desjarlais.
Where are you from, Joe?
From Isle Cross originally.
Okay, and did you grow up in Isle Cross?
Yeah, like right from birth.
Okay, and then when did you leave Isle Cross?
Right when I graduated high school. Went straight out of high school into university.
And do you miss being back home?
Oh, I miss it every day. I'm scheduling time, like I canceled a bunch of gigs for about a week and I'm going home.
Nice, nice. And last we have?
I'm Dean Smith and I'm from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan.
Dean, you and I have a long history together. We grew up together playing street hockey and whatnot. And so tell me a little bit about you living in Prince Albert, the Dean Smith that I know.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a just a pretty humble household down. I actually lived both East and West Flat in Prince Albert, but my roots originally are from on my dad's side is Duck Lake, Saskatchewan. My grandparents actually were one of the first Métis homesteaders at St. Laurent, which is just across the river from kind of where we're sitting. And so a lot of my family's from Duck Lake area and this kind of area as well. So
nice. Okay, so I asked you three to join me here at the beautiful church to have a little fireside chat about your life as fiddlers. And so we'll just ask a few questions and just tell everybody, you know, what your life has been like as a fiddler. So Dean, I'll start with you. And you guys can each answer these in sequence. Dean, what inspired you to play fiddle and pick up the fiddle?
you know, it was the going to dances, weddings, dances as a youth, young, and there was always back in the day there was always a fiddle player, and not necessarily a Métis fiddle player, but there was always some kind of fiddle player, and I used to remember watching. I was just in awe of the sound that come out of that. And I always thought, boy, I'd love to do that one day. And we had a fiddle at home, and it was one of my uncle's. And I would pull it out and scratch it and try and play it, and it would just sound horrible. And I'd put it back, and I thought one day, you know what, I'm going to learn it. And here we are today. So
right
yeah.
on. Scratching sounds like me trying to play the fiddle.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. So at first, yeah.
Nice. And Joe?
Started scratching with John Arcand. I was sitting in class one day and it was a complete surprise. My teacher said, raise your hand if you want to learn fiddle. And so I put my hand up and they walked us over to where John was sitting. And I saw this humble looking old man just kind of hanging out. And I didn't really know who he was. Like I wasn't up north. I was kind of so detached from all the fiddle lifestyle and all that. And then he started playing a tune. I don't remember what the tune was, but it was so beautiful. And I was like, I want to play that. I want to be that good. Someday.
And was that at Rossignol?
I was in Rossignol Elementary School.
Nice, nice. And I've been up to Rossignol a few times at the Mitchell Festival, and I got to tour the John Arcand room. John, I phoned him from Rossignol one day, and I said, this is, because he's never seen the John Arcand room. And so I was there this past winter, and I showed him, and I FaceTimed him. I said, John, this is the John Arcand room.
Yeah.
He said, can you take pictures for me? I one-upped him, and I FaceTimed him. I said, here's your room, buddy. So I showed him that. Okay, Joe, JJ, who inspired you to play fiddle, and when did you pick it up?
I picked up fiddle later in life, not till I was 23 years old. And I have more than one influence to talk about. I'll try and keep it short, but so I wanted to be a country guitar player. And I grew up like Dean. There was always fiddles, there was always guitars, old-time dances. And at the time, you had to be 18, so the kids would play outside the hall. And we would hear, they'd have the screen door, and we'd stand up the screen door, and guys like my Uncle Darren Lavallee, Cliff Mitawayashing, every once in a while, Paddy Custeruk would come into town. Gary Lapine would come into town. And that was when I was young, and I would see these guys, and I would see the dance floor packed, and they'd be sweating, and they didn't care. They were just loved the music. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And then when I turned 23 years old, a fella by the name of Yvon Dumont, he used to be a past MMF president, came up to me, he says, JJ, you play guitar, you play bass, you play almost everything. He says, how come you don't play fiddle? I said, I don't have one. So he says, well, come with me. Took me to his house. Hands me this Corelli, cheap Corelli beginner violin, and he says, play something on me. You want to talk about scratching? So I played the mandolin first, and the mandolin is tuned the same as a fiddle. So what I did was I kind of knew where to put my fingers, and I picked up the fiddle and I scratched out Rubber Dolly, and he recorded it. It was terrible. And then he says, okay, you have 3 months to learn how to play. If you don't take it serious, I'm taking back the fiddle. 3 months later, went to his house. He called me like clockwork, pressed his record, and I played him Rubber Dolly. And then he goes, okay, I want you to listen to what you sounded like 3 months ago. I couldn't even listen. It was horrible, right? So that's how I got going. Later in life, at 23 years old.
Wow, good for you.
Does that recording still exist?
Oh, he has it.
Yeah?
Yeah. I hope he has it locked in a safe somewhere.
I actually did that on my first recording, first time in a studio recording, and played a tune that I really wanted on there, and went back into the room and listened, and I said, what's that? He said, well, that's you. I said, well, we're not putting that on the record. He said, get rid of that thing, because that's not even close to what it's.
I sound like that, yeah.
Okay, so you've each brought your instruments with me. Starting with Joe, we'll go to Dean and then end off with JJ. Tell me about your fiddle and the history behind your fiddle.
I wish I knew more about this fiddle. So I bought this fiddle from Lucas Welsh about a year ago, maybe a little longer. It's from, as best as we can tell, it's from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s. So there's a 50-year span that it could be in. Yeah. It's a really, really old fiddle, and it's a Grenarius replica. So there's sort of, there's Stradivarius, Grenarius, that kind of. And it's a really, really, really nice fiddle. It has been through a lot. There's a lot of battle scars and wounds, but it's so nice. And he had 5 fiddles laid out on the table, and I tried them one after another. And I picked them up and I did this. All I did was just because that's, I like that noise, right? And I tried the next one, and they're all really good fiddles, all the first 4. But then I picked up this one, and it just, my whole body resonated when I hit that note, and I was like, this is the fiddle that I want. Nice. And I bought it right then and there.
Nice. Okay, Dean?
So mine is actually a German-made one. It's actually not that old. It's I believe it's a 2006 model. It's a Roth. Some of the Patty Kustrick plays Roth violin. Kelvin Vollrath, one of the best fiddle players around, plays one. So this is my second one I had. The first one I had, I sold it to another fiddle player named Adam Daigneault. Really good fiddle player, so he ended up with that. And it's just one that I looked around. I've probably owned 20, 30 fiddles in my time. Wow. But this is the kind of the one I ended up with and stuck with now for years. So, yeah.
Nice. JJ?
Well, as I was telling you earlier, we had, I used to have a copy of a Stradivarius, and it was an unfortunate accident in one of the pubs I was playing in, and a fella slipped and fell and broke it. And I had a gig the next day, and out of the 15 or 20 fiddles he had on the shelf, I needed one with a pickup. I had a budget. And this is a Barkus Berry, and Barkus Berry makes pickups. So this one automatically plugs in. And for most violins, they don't come with pickups, so you have to buy that on top of. But this one came with it. I tried it out, and out of the 20, I'm like, okay, well, this one will do. And it served me well. Talk about battle scars. It's been signed by Natalie McMaster, Adam Beach. It has been played in -40 weather, and it came apart. It has broken. I've had it repaired. It's on its last legs. So I got it to make me a promise that I could get through back to Batoche days, and I'm going to put it to rest. I'm going to put it in a case. I've probably got 1,000+ gigs on it. It's served me well. It has given me such a beautiful life, and I owe a lot to it. So it's going to be sad hanging it up, but it's time to move on.
Nice. That's a nice story. Okay, and so before we came on camera, we were talking about the sound of the fiddles make, and so Dean, we'll start with you. So you'll tell me a little bit about. Can you tell me a little bit about you playing JJ's fiddle or Joseph's fiddle? Can you make it sound the same as they can?
Well, we were speaking about that earlier, and JJ brought up the point that everyone kind of plays their own style, has their own feel, and so I could take JJ's fiddle and play a tune on it, but it's probably not gonna. I'm not gonna be able to pull out the feeling in that fiddle like JJ would, because it's his own fiddle. It's his own. He gets his own kind of sound out of it, and vice versa. Like I got a big booming sounding violin, but someone else might not be able to pull that sound out, because it's kind of something that sticks with you. It's kind of like a part of you. So.
Okay. You guys want to add anything to that?
Well, no, Dean nailed it. Every fiddler has their unique feel. And I take it a step deeper. I believe that you build a connection with your instrument. Your instrument comes on the road with you. You have so much joy. You play for dances. And I believe that all your joy resonates through this. And the more you play it, the more better it sounds. That's why they say the older the violin, the sweeter the tune. Because the more you play it, the better you're going to get out of it. And you form a connection with that instrument. And then it's like it's yours. It's yours. You formed a bond.
Yeah, just to add to that, like you could put us all in a dark room, even though these violins all look the same, they're strung up with strings that are all the same. We would play it in a room, dark, and you would know that's not my fiddle. This one's my fiddle. As soon as you grab it, because it's, your bridge is shaped different. Everything's just the feel and the sound. It's stuck with you, so you would know exactly which fiddle is whose. Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, now we talked a little bit about starting the fiddle. Who have you looked up to the most as a fiddle player?
Myself, like I say, I've watched so many. I have so many of them, but I would probably have to say the guy that probably started me off, getting me, was my grandfather, who actually originally wasn't a fiddle player. He'd play a little bit, but he just had a musical background. He was so encouraging. He played accordion and kind of everything else. So he was always kind of my musical influence. But for violin, fiddle, I would probably have to say Donnie Perano was my fiddle teacher, and he's the one that kind of taught me kind of the style that I kind of, everyone has their own style, but that was kind of the way I went with in terms of fiddle. He's a Métis fiddle player and a fairly big name in Nashville, so I would say probably he was. But I have so many, like John Arcand, Calvin Vollrath, Emil Dumais from Canwood area was big influential. Ernie Iapes from Beardy's. I have so many, so kind of steal from everyone,
Nice. And Joe, who is your fiddling idol?
Currently? Sure. In general? I think for the longest time it was probably John Arcand. And to this day it probably still is John Arcand, but like Dean was saying, like there's so many amazing fiddle players and so many awesome things that you hear and so many amazing people that you meet. I mean, these two I idolized for a while. And like Natalie McMaster, Calvin Vollrath, Paddy Custerock, Alex Custerock, big names. And even little names, like the guy I was playing with here, Jeremy Corrigal. He was always just one step ahead of me in fiddle, for most of our life. And I always looked up to that because I was, he'd play a cool tune and I'm like, well, now I need to learn that.
Nice. And JJ?
Man, so many. Like my Uncle Darren was my idol growing up, and he always played the fiddle. He had his own unique style. He never followed the status quo of learning a tune. He'd always make his own kind of feel to it, eh? Like he plays the most unique version of the Red River Jig I ever heard. He was one of them. And then, you know, Jason Lapine was one of the fiddlers. He lived in Portage Prairie, and everywhere we went, before I learned to play, it was Jason and his dad Gary. And I always felt that Jason and I have similar styles, and I got that from him. When he picks up a fiddle, he drives it. He puts an energy into that fiddle. He digs in the bow. He gets right in there. And I was like, I like that. I love that style, because everyone's good. Like Joseph said, so many wonderful fiddle players, but some of them just do-do-do-do. They got the suave. They make it, they play it like butter. Then you got the other ones that kind of, but Jason Lapine, he drove that thing, man. He owned that fiddle, and he really, that was kind of how the style I really wanted. I loved the energy. I wanted to get in there, and right from the first tune, I wanted to put it to the floor, right? Like I wanted to get the crowd going, and Jason always does that. So he was a huge influence.
Okay, so we've decided on a couple tunes. So can you guys play Whiskey Before Breakfast for me, please? And then we'll have a couple more questions, and then we'll end off with Big John McNeil. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Sure. Figure out this armrest here.
Dean, why don't you start us off, buddy? We'll follow you.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Awesome. Wow. I hope our ancestors behind us are enjoying that music. You guys are phenomenal. So tell me about the toe tapping when you're playing, JJ.
That is something I saw a lot, and Dean could probably saw it too. Oh, yeah. Not a lot of fiddlers do it, but the ones that did, it was attractive to me. And I remember when I was learning how to play, whenever my uncles and aunts would sit around and there's fiddle music, I'd watch their feet. And they could all do it. So if we were on a wood floor, it sounded like a herd of cattle, or horses coming. And it was this. So if you slow it down, it's almost like the jig step. Mm-hmm. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I would watch, and I would sit in the corner and 1, 2, 3. And it's the same rhythm as the spoons. Tick a tick, tick a tick, tick a tick, tick a tick, tick a tick. So it's that, we call it the tick attack, eh? and I would just watch them all do it. And when there's a bunch of them in a room in unison, it was so amazing. And yeah, I just practiced it over and over and over, and I still got to get it right.
Yeah, it sounds great. Okay, so we've mentioned the master of the Métis fiddle a few times, and Joe, you said John was one of your biggest influences. What impact did John have on you learning fiddle?
Everything. I mean, I wouldn't have learned fiddle without John. I wouldn't have picked up this instrument without John. He came to our school. My auntie actually had originally invited him to our school a number of years before I was at the age where I could play. And then he had continued that program, and he come up to our school in Alacross, a 5-hour drive for a week out of every month during the school year, and he would teach fiddle from grades 5 to 12. And you know, whoever wanted to could go in and learn fiddle, and it's like, I mean, it's a huge influence. And to this day, like, I'll go visit him, and he lives in Montgomery now in Saskatchewan, and to this day I'll go visit him, and every single time I'm always put right back into that student chair, and I'm learning something. Learning a lot of things, to be honest, most of the time. It's a really, really humbling experience, and I love it every time.
Nice. I just want to add, he's very lucky to grow up in Saskatchewan and have John here.
I know.
If I was a kid in Saskatchewan, that's the first guy I would have seeked out.
Yes, yes. So I've had the pleasure of visiting John and Vicky quite a few times now in the last couple of years, and so he's doing a legacy, he's building a legacy, his own legacy of building 100 fiddles, and the 100th fiddle being the Golden Fiddle Dean. Tell me what that means to you, to know that the master of the Métis fiddle is leaving a legacy behind of 100 fiddles.
Well, I think something like that is huge. I think even like to learn to play myself, I couldn't even imagine trying to build a fiddle, let alone 100 of them. And I've seen his fiddles and I've heard them and played on them, and they're unreal, some of them. So I think it's a huge legacy that he's leaving behind with building 100 fiddles. Like, I would love to even have one.
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
Yes. I think one of my favorite Johnny fiddles, he took a bison bone and he made the fingerboard, tailpiece, chin rest, and pegs out of bison bone.
Oh.
That's probably the best. I mean, I got to play it once or twice. Once at his house before he sold it to GDI, and once at GDI. And it was a beautiful experience.
Okay, I've seen the collection of 100. I've scratched out, I think, either Happy Birthday or something, and it was awful to listen to, but you know what, the master of the Métis fiddle wanted me to play, and so I did. And we'll end off with, if you had any inspiring words for young fiddlers out there, JJ, what would you tell a young fiddler? What would you tell a young JJ Lavallee?
Well, we're going to go right back to the scratching.
Yes.
Most people quit at the scratching. They get discouraged. I got discouraged. If I have time to tell a quick little story.
Sure.
So I was playing. I used to live with my aunt and uncle at the time, and I was learning to play fiddle, and after supper I would play in the house, but they would get me to go play in the field right next door to the house. I was out standing in my field. And one day, I'll never forget the moment I got it. I couldn't get that part in Big John McNeil. I couldn't get the bow work. It was scratchy. So I got mad and I put my fiddle down in the case. I'm done. Put up my hands and I walked away. Walked into the kitchen. My aunt says, "Where's your fiddle?" "In the field." "Well, you treat it better than that. Don't leave it there." And I said, "I'm going back to it." She goes, "Well, what's wrong?" "I'm done." "Oh, I didn't peg you for a quitter," she says. And I said, "Well, I'm not quitting. I'm just frustrated." She goes, "Well, take a deep breath and go back out there." So I did. And when I went back out there, I picked it up and it was magical. So my advice is, don't quit before the miracle happens. Treat your fiddle good and it will treat you good. Have a love for the music, and find your role models. Find your role models that do what you do, that resonate with you. His role model is John. His is Donnie Peranto. Mine was like Jason Lapine style. So not every fiddle player will resonate with you, but study all of them because they all have something unique for you to learn. And so my advice is never quit, because you're going to have a point where the fiddle is a very hard instrument to learn. It's one of the most difficult, and it's because of the scratching. You were talking about the scratching, and I always tell people this is the easy part. It's the bow, and you're going to get discouraged, but never quit. Never quit. Because there's a reason that instrument chose you and you chose it to play. It's like winning. When you finally get it, it's the most rewarding feeling in the world. So just don't ever quit.
Okay, Dean, what would you tell a young Dean Smith?
I would say first off is practice and like you say, don't quit. Find a style that's going to fit with you. You know, don't be so technical. I find there's a lot of that with fiddle and violin where you'll go to an instructor and be like, you have to hold your bow this way, this is the only way, or you have to hold your hand a certain way, and it's like, find what works for you. It might not look right to other people or feel right, but if you get that feel and it clicks, stick with it. You don't need to change it, and you don't need to be so technical, because some of the best Métis fiddle players around didn't even hold the fiddle up. They would hold it on down low, and hold the bow halfway up, and they'd be playing, and people, I can't play that way, but that's what worked for them, and touching on what JJ said, like, I remember the very first time I got a paid gig to go play somewhere. It was I think it was a casino. They had the Monday old time fiddle nights, and I think I had about, at that time, 30 tunes, and it was a 2-hour gig, and I was like, okay, how am I gonna make this work? So I would go all the time and watch different fiddle players, watch how they interacted, how they played their tunes, how long they played them, and just I basically studied other people and took a little bit from everyone, and I went and did my first gig, and went off fairly well, enough where they got me back again. So, so just stick with it. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, Joe, what would you tell young Joseph Desjarlais?
Well, first I was going to say don't give up, but then JJ said that. Then I was going to say just be comfortable. Just, don't worry about technique, because every teacher is going to tell you something different. But that's what Dean touched on. And then I was racking my brain trying to figure out what I could say. And I thought, oh yeah, just have fun.
Yes.
I don't, like, competitions are nice, and it's good to be a little competitive because it helps you to be like push yourself and be a little bit better. But if you're not having fun, you got to find ways to have fun with the fiddle. And it's a really fun instrument at every level. Like, even when you first start, it's a really fun instrument. So have fun.
Good.
If I could tell a quick little story
sure.
before.
We're Métis, we love to tell stories.
When I first learned the fiddle, I learned a couple tunes, and I didn't really know a jig. And I went to a buddy that was showing me stuff, Darren LaFond, and he's from Duck Lake, Beardy's area, and he showed me a tune called Paul's Jig. And I remember, I want to go play somewhere in front of people. And it was back to Batoche days, was the first place. So I come here, and I was with my parents. I was an adult at that time. I started, I think I was 24, 25. And I said, I'm going to go enter the contest at Batoche. And so we're driving. We took the river road from St. Louis and coming in the motorhome, and we're driving to get over the hills. And I see all these campers. And I was like, holy man, I'm not going to go play. And there's too many people there. So I go in there, and it was actually John and Vicky were kind of running the fiddle contest. And I said, I'm going to sign up for the fiddle contest. She says, oh, good. She says, there's not very many people. And I said, okay. She says, go find some more people. So Darren, who taught me Paul's Jig, was there. So I said to Darren, I said, hey, come in the fiddle contest. He's like, no way. He said, I'm not playing. I said, come on. I said, come with me. I said, but there's only one rule. You can't play that jig that you taught me. Play a different one. So he laughed, and he says, okay. So we go in, we enter the contest. Didn't know, it was only me and him in the adult category. I won first place, he won second with the tune he taught me. And we were killing ourselves laughing about it after. And so that was my first time playing in front of a crowd. So, and it was here. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Those are good stories.
Competitions, they're the best place to make friends. Yeah. I'm so excited to go to the Grandmasters. There's going to be just tons of friends that I could make.
Yes, Joe, can you share us a little bit about the Grandmasters?
Sure. The Canadian Grandmasters is a fiddle competition usually held out east in like Ontario or Quebec. and it's an invite competition, and they get, I think it's usually about 30 people from across Canada. This year it's in Whitehorse, Yukon, so I'm really excited to go there. I mean, I've never been that far north. And yeah, you go up and you choose 4 tunes. So normally with contests it's 3 tunes. It's a waltz, a jig, and a reel. But this one they add a tune of choice. You get to play anything you want. And it's 30 of Canada's at least most known fiddle players. Is kind of how I would describe it. I wouldn't say best. They're really like everyone that's there is phenomenal, But you get up there, you play your tunes, and you have 4 minutes to play what you want to play. And man, if I've never been nervous playing fiddle before, I'm going to be nervous on that stage.
I think you're going to do wonderful, young man, because
Yeah.
you're one of the. You have such an amazing style. You're going to just do your best. I know.
I'm going to do my best. Yeah, we'll see what that gets.
Yeah, congratulations on the invite.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Joey. I wish you nothing but the best at the Grand Masters. And
Do you
so
want a little silly story about that?
Yeah, sure.
When I got the news,
We love our story.
the guy,
we love our
yeah.
stories, yeah.
The guy who texted me, Mark Sullivan, said, "Hey, can I have your email?" And I thought he wanted to ask about a gig or something. Sometimes he plays fiddle around Saskatchewan. And then he sent the email, "Congratulations, you're invited." I threw my phone down, jumped out of bed, and I went running around my house. I was so excited. I was over the moon.
Good for you.
Spent a good 5 minutes just celebrating.
Nice, good.
Do we have time for one more quick story?
Sure, yeah.
It's just to touch on what Dean said, because he nailed it. So he's talking about how you hold your bow. So I was a self-taught fiddler. I never took a lesson. I taught myself how to play. So I held my bow very unorthodox, And there was a lady, God bless her, God rest her soul. Her name was Burl Bouvet. She was the wife of Reg Bouvet.
Oh, yeah.
And Burl was a very stern lady. God rest, she was amazing. There was no one like Burl. And she told you what was on her mind. And one day in Batoche, I played Batoche. I think it was the year after the big, was it the 100 celebration?
The 50th?
Yeah, the big, it was the year after. And Burl was there. And I was selling my fiddle CDs like hotcakes. I sold 500 CDs after my show. It's the most I ever sold. It was unbelievable. Burl walks up to me, "JJ." So what? "If Reg were alive, he would smack that bow out of your hand," she goes. I said, "Oh no, why, Burl?" "Well, the way you hold that bow," she goes, "that's so unorthodox. You should see how silly you look up there." But I knew Burl, and I respected her. So being young and I said, "Well, Burl, with all due respect, I just sold 500 fiddle CDs. I don't think they care how I hold my bow." So, like Dean said, we're all unique at how we play. That's what makes the Métis fiddle so special.
Yes, nice. Okay, let's end things off with my favorite tune, Big John McNeil.
Sure.
Yeah, you start us off.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Once again, guys, I really think you're making our ancestors happy right behind us in the graveyard there.
I can feel them.
I can feel it too. So I would like to thank each one of you for coming to join me here at the beautiful church and joining me here. So thank you, JJ.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dean.
This was so fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.